Good morning, 4th grade. Yesterday we learned about our figurative language terms in poetry. Today we're going to be continuing on with those terms to write our own poems and write a poetry term book. Can we recall some of the terms that we talked about yesterday? There was 5 of them. Jordan.
Simile.
Yes, a simile was one of the terms. Yes?
Hyperbole.
Hyperbole. Good job. Yes?
Metaphor.
Metaphor. 2 more.
Personification.
Personification. Yes?
Onomatopoeia.
Onomatopoeia. Good job. Those are the 5 terms that we worked on yesterday. So now we're going to be using those 5 terms in our poetry term books and using them in the poems that we're going to write today. But first, let's look at a book, Dirt on My Shirt, by Jeff Foxworthy, and look at a few examples of them. Our first poem we're going to look at is noises. So noises. Boing, 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 goes a happy kangaroo. Boing, 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 goes a hoppy frog too. Yip, 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 goes the puppy up the street. Tweet, 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 goes a little parakeet. Ding-a-ling-ling, goes a fire truck in a hurry. Wah, 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 goes my baby brother Murray. Can you guys tell me what is an example of one of the poetry terms that was used in this poem? Keely.
Onomatopoeia.
An onomatopoeia was used. Good job, that's correct. Let's continue on. How about the next poem we're going to look at is My Auntie Brooke. My Auntie Brooke just loves to cook, from turkey to cookies to bread. When she makes spaghetti, you better get ready for meatballs the size of your head. She once made a cake as big as a lake. A cement truck stirred up the batter. She put on the icing that was so enticing with the roar from a boat and a ladder. Can you guys give me an example of one of the figurative language terms that was used in this poem? Jordan?
A simile was used.
A simile, you're right, because she once made a cake as big as a lake is a great example of a simile. All right, so let's continue on, and we're going to just review our terms real quick and the definitions before we begin our term books. So listed here are, again, the 5 terms that we're going to use. Our first one that we're going to look at is simile. It's 2 unlike things are compared using like or as to create a deeper meaning or understanding. An example of that would be the one that we just looked at in the book, or the wind whistled like a songbird, and I'm as quiet as a clam. They both use like or as. Metaphor. 2 unlike things are compared without using like or as. An example of that was the lion was the king of the forest, or love is a red, red rose. It's comparing 2 things, but yet it's not using like or as. Personification is a non-human object. It's described with human characteristics. So the moon smiled down on us is an example. It's using the moon, which can't technically smile, but it's giving it human characteristics. Onomatopoeia, a word or words that create a sound that matches the action. So that was the sound noises in our Dirt on My Shirt book that we just read. And it goes bzz or sloosh are 2 examples of those. A hyperbole is an exaggeration for effect or to make a point. And a great example of that is I have a million things to do, or I had a ton of homework. Those are both exaggerations. All right, and those are the end of our terms. So I'm going to be giving you guys, we're going to quickly assess your knowledge one more time of these terms. I'm going to give you guys a worksheet, and I want you guys to match the 5 terms with the definitions here below. a quick checking for understanding to make sure that you guys really know your terms before we start our alphabet books. All right, good job, you guys. Yes. Now, you guys, let's get out our colored pencils because here's our markers because we're going to be working on our term books, okay? So you guys are going to have 5 pieces of paper, and we're going to use our papers like this. You're going to do it up and down, vertical, and you're going to write a big S on the beginning of the page, just like in an alphabet book. We would have a big S, and then down here you're going to write a poem using a simile. And then you guys will illustrate your poem right up above, right next to the big S, okay? So here's 5 pieces of paper for you. And here's 5 pieces of paper for you. Like I said, our first page will be an S for simile. And then we'll go on, we'll do the metaphor, hyperbole, personification, and then lastly onomatopoeia. Jordan, I like your example of a simile.
Thank you.
Can you integrate 2 figurative language terms into your poem instead of just 1?
Yes.
Okay. Which other term are you going to integrate into your poem?
I'm going to do a metaphor as well.
A metaphor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, Kaylee, since you're almost done with your poem, can you illustrate your poem for me as well?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, Jordan, can you tell me why you chose a simile, or why you chose that example of a simile?
I used as in my example, and I said I smiled as because I smile a lot. And then I chose to do a metaphor with that because the metaphor is the opposite of a simile, so I wanted to put them together in one poem.
Good job, because there's a correlation between a simile and a metaphor?
Yes.
All right, good job. All right, now let's go on to our next page, and then next page we'll do a big M on the page, and we'll do a metaphor. So we'll do a big M on the page, the top, yep, and then right below that we'll write our poem using a metaphor. All right, boys and girls, so as you guys finish up the last part of your poetry term books, we're going to just do a quick review because today we made our alphabet books. But can we recall the 5 terms with an example for me one more time? Yes, Keely.
A hyperbole.
A hyperbole. Yes, that is one of our terms. And what is an example of a hyperbole?
She's the best dance teacher in the whole world.
She is the best dance teacher in the whole world. You're right. What's next? One more term? Yeah?
A simile.
A simile. Okay, there's 2 terms. Give me an example of a simile.
An example would be she dances like Michael Jackson.
She dances like Michael Jackson. Correct. Use like or as to compare 2 things. Great job. What's the next one? Yes.
A metaphor.
A metaphor. Okay. What's an example of a metaphor?
The house was a colorful rainbow.
Yes, that's correct. Okay, what's another one? Yes, Jordan?
Personification.
Personification. Okay.
the flowers looked sad.
The flowers looked sad. Yes, that is. You're right. Okay. What is one more? Our last term. Can we recall the last term? Yes.
Onomatopoeia.
An onomatopoeia. What's an example of an onomatopoeia?
The car went vroom vroom.
The car went vroom vroom. Correct. Those are the 5 poetry terms that we worked on today. If you guys will just leave your poetry term books on your desk, I'll collect them and I will be taking them just like this. And I'm going to be binding them together with ribbon. And then tomorrow, I'm going to have you guys pick one of your poems to read to your classmates, okay? And then we'll continue on with making a word wall. So thank you, boys and girls. Good job today. Let's line up and go to computers.